Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Tonight, I pulled a story straight from the depths of Reddit. The kind of story that starts slow and then refuses to let go. It's unsettling, it's personal, and once you hear it, you won't forget it. So get comfortable, turn the lights down, and let's begin. I kept all my prize money, even though it would have helped my dad and my stepmom. The first thing I did, after checking the balance on my phone, was look at my hands to see if they were shaking. They weren't. They were perfectly still. And that was the most terrifying part of all. That scream told me something. I was no longer a kid, living in a house that smelled like damn drywall and old grease. I was someone with $50,000 and a chance to never breathe that air again. I sat in my car for 20 minutes. The engine idled roughly. I just watched the front door of our house. It was a small beige, ranch-style place, the kind that looked like it was slowly sinking into the dirt of our small town. My dad was probably in his recliner, the one with torn upholstery he refused to throw away. My stepmother was likely in the kitchen, nursing a lukewarm cup of coffee, staring at bills she had no intention of paying. They were waiting for me. They knew the prize money was coming. They just didn't know I had already moved it to an account they couldn't touch. I stepped inside. The silence was thick, the kind of silence that usually precedes a storm. My dad didn't look up from the television, but I could see it, the tension in his shoulders. "You're late," he said. His voice was flat. "We thought you'd be back hours ago to help us figure out the situation with the electric company." "I was at the bank," I replied. My voice sounded more confident than I felt. I stayed by the door. My keys were still gripped in my palm like a weapon. I set up the tuition payments. The money is locked in for school. My stepmother walked out of the kitchen then, drying her hands on a rag that was more holes than fabric. She gave me a look that was supposed to be maternal, but her eyes kept darting toward my pockets. "Honey, we talked about this," she said softly. She stepped closer. "We're so proud of what you achieved. Truly. But your father's back is getting worse. And this house, if we don't fix the roof before winter, we aren't going to have a home to come back to for the holidays." She leaned in slightly. "You're part of this family. We've always looked out for you, haven't we?" I felt a sickening wave of nostalgia. I remembered her looking out for me by selling the guitar my grandmother left me so she could pay for a weekend trip they took without me. I remember my dad looking out for me by claiming me as a dependent on his taxes long after I was working 40 hours a week and paying him rent. "I'm not giving you the money," I said. The air in the room shifted instantly. My dad stood up. The recliner groaned as it released him. He wasn't the broken man he pretended to be for the disability office. He was tall, broad, and suddenly very menacing. "You think you're better than us now?" he growled. He stepped toward me. "You think because you won some contest, you get to walk away while we starve? Everything in this house, including the clothes on your back, was paid for by the sacrifices I made. You owe us. I owe you my childhood." I snapped back. "And you already took that." I turned to leave. My stepmother blocked the hallway. She wasn't smiling anymore. A strange, twisted look of triumph crossed her face. It made my stomach turn. "You might want to check your phone again, sweetie," she whispered. "The bank called here while you were driving back. They had some questions about the unauthorized transfer you made. It seems your father's name is still listed as a joint owner on that old savings account you used." My heart plummeted. I opened that account when I was 16. I thought I had removed him. I thought I was safe. "We didn't just take the $15,000 for the roof," my dad said. A cruel smile spread across his face. He held up his phone. "A confirmation of a massive transfer. We took it all for the family." But as I looked at the screen, I realized something. The amount wasn't 50,000. It was 65,000. They had drained an account I didn't even know existed, one that had been hidden in the shadows of our family history for years. The room seemed to tilt. On its axis, I stared at the numbers. On the screen, $65,000. My head was spinning. The math didn't add up. I knew exactly what I had won, down to the penny, and it wasn't that much. I looked from my father to my stepmother. Their faces were illuminated by the harsh blue light of the phone, and for a second, they didn't look like my parents. They looked like strangers. Strangers who had been waiting in the tall grass for years, just waiting for me to get close enough to strike. Where did the rest come from? I asked. My voice was barely a whisper. The prize was 50. Where did the other 15 come from? My father laughed. Short, dry, like sandpaper on wood. He sat back down in his recliner, but he didn't lean back. He sat on the edge, energized by the theft. Does it matter? He said. It's in a family account now. It's staying there. We're getting a new truck, fixing the roof, maybe even taking a real vacation. For once, you should be happy. You finally contributed something to this household, besides an attitude you don't understand. I said. My heart began to thud against my ribs. Hard, violent. It was getting hard to breathe. I moved that money into a private vault. If there was 65 in there, you didn't just take my prize. You triggered something. My stepmother's smug expression faltered just for a second. She looked down at the phone, then back at me. It was just a transfer, honey. Don't try to scare us with big words. We called the bank, gave them your father's social security number, told them you were incapacitated. They moved it right over. It's legal. A cold sweat broke out across the back of my neck. I hadn't just moved the money to a new account. I had used a high-interest escrow service, one provided by the contest sponsors. It was tied to a very specific insurance bond, a security measure designed to protect the funds from exactly this. But there was a clause hidden in the fine print, a clause about unauthorized access, one I had prayed I'd never see in action. I pulled out my phone. The notification made my blood turn to ice. It wasn't from the bank. It was a security alert from the insurance firm, marked with a red banner. Priority 1. System breach detected. Fraudulent transfer initiated. Secondary security protocols engaged. Location tracking active. Law enforcement notified of grand larceny in progress. I looked at my father. He was scrolling through a car dealership website, pointing out chrome rims. To my stepmother, they were so lost in the fantasy of their new life. They didn't hear the siren. It was faint, distant, but getting closer. Our town was small. The police station was less than 3 miles away. Dad, I said. My voice was shaking now. You have to move it back. Right now. I'm not kidding. That extra 15,000. That wasn't money. That was the insurance bond. If you touch that, it's not civil anymore. It's a felony. It's federal. He stood up, but this time, his face twisted into something dark, ugly. He grabbed my collar, pulled me close. I could smell stale coffee and tobacco on his breath. I'm the head of this house. He snarled. You don't tell me. What's legal? You're just a kid who got lucky. Now you're hoarding it. Like a rat. I'm taking what I'm owed. I'm trying to save you from prison. I screamed. I shoved it back. He stumbled into the coffee table. Bills scattered everywhere. Red stamps flashing like warning lights. My stepmother rushed to him. She glared at me like I was the thief. You've always been selfish, she hissed. Ever since your mother left. You act like the world owes you something. Well, it doesn't. We do. The sirens were louder now, screaming through the quiet neighborhood. Then it hit me. They weren't slowing down. They weren't stopping. At the end of the block, they were turning onto our street. I looked out the front window. Blue and red lights reflected off the dirty glass. But then I saw something else. A black SUV pulling in behind a police cruiser. That vehicle did not belong to the local cops. My father saw it too. The bravado drained from his face, replaced by confusion. Fear. What is that? He asked. Who is that? And then I understood. The twist wasn't just about the money. It was about how fast The insurance company reacted. The contest wasn't just a sports prize. It was funded by a private corporation, one with ties I hadn't fully researched. A corporation that didn't just protect its money with lawyers, but with people who didn't care about family loyalty. The front door didn't open. It was kicked off its hinges, but the police weren't first. A man in a gray suit stepped inside. His face was hard as granite. He wasn't looking at my father. He was looking at me. "We have a problem," the man said. His voice was cold as a grave. "And it seems your parents have just made themselves a very expensive liability." The man in the gray suit didn't wait for an invitation. He stepped over the shattered remains of our doorframe like he owned the place. His eyes scanned the room with clinical precision. Detached, cold. Behind him, 2 local police officers stood on the porch. They weren't moving. They shifted their weight, stared at their boots. They had been told to stay out of the way of whatever authority this man represented. My father was still clutching his phone. His knuckles were white. "Who the hell are you?" he shouted. "You can't just bust into a private residence. I'll have your badge." The man didn't blink. He pulled a slim, leather-bound folder from his jacket and tossed it onto the kitchen table, right on top of the spilled coffee. "I don't have a badge, sir," he said. "I have a contract." "A contract your ward signed when they entered the National Endurance Trials. A contract that strictly stipulates the prize money is corporate property held in trust until the recipient reaches the age of 24 or until specific conditions are met." My stepmother stepped back. Her hand fluttered to her throat. "We, with a legal guardians, we have a right to manage the estate. You have a right to stay silent," the man replied. His voice dropped. "When you initiated that transfer, you bypassed a Tier 4 encryption wall. That wasn't just moving money. You used a hardware key, a key that was supposed to be in your ward's possession. How did you get the key?" The room went quiet. I looked at my dad. For the first time, I saw real fear in his eyes. He looked at my stepmother. She suddenly found the linoleum floor very interesting. "The key," I whispered. The realization hit like a punch. "The USB drive on my keychain, the one you said you lost when you borrowed my car last week. We just wanted to see what was on it." My stepmother screamed. Her voice cracked into panic. "We didn't know. It was some government thing. We thought it was pictures or something we could use." "It isn't government," the man said. For the first time, he looked at me. "It's proprietary. The endurance trials weren't just a track meet. They were a data-gathering exercise for a private security firm. We look for specific traits: high stress tolerance, fast recovery, and most importantly, an absence of strong external ties. We invest $50,000 into a candidate's education to ensure they become an asset. By stealing that money, you didn't just rob a kid. You sabotaged $1 million recruitment investment." The room spun. I wasn't a winner. I was a candidate, an experiment. The money wasn't a reward. It was a down payment on my life. I looked at the man in the suit. I saw a future that looked like a cage. Then I looked at my parents, the people who shoved me into it to pay for a new roof. However, the man continued. He tapped the folder. "There's a clause for domestic interference. If a candidate's environment is deemed a detrimental variable, we are authorized to liquidate the threat to the investment." My father finally spoke. His voice was thin, shaking. "Liquidate?" he asked. "What does that mean? You're going to sue us?" "Go ahead. We don't have anything." The man smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. It wasn't human, just muscles moving. "We don't sue people like you," he said. "It isn't cost effective. But the $15,000 you took from the insurance bond, that triggered a mandatory recovery protocol. Since the money has already been spent on digital debt clearances and luxury pre-orders in the last 10 minutes, we'll recover the value in other ways." He turned to the police officers. Officers, you can take them in. For grand larceny now, we'll handle asset recovery of the home and its contents. Starting tomorrow, the home. My stepmother gasped. You can't take the house. It's all we have. The house is collateral, the man said, for the bond. You breached. You have 1 hour to pack. A single bag each. Anything left behind will be auctioned to cover the legal fees of your own prosecution. As the officers cuffed my father, he started screaming, not at the man, not at the cops, at me. You did this, he shouted. You brought these people here. You're a monster. You're letting them take our home. I watched them being led outside, rain pouring down, their faces twisted with pure hatred, so intense. It felt hot. I was free of them, but when I looked at the man in the gray suit, I realized something worse. I had traded 2 small-time thieves for one very professional one. Pack your things, the man said. He didn't turn around. The jet leaves at midnight. You have a lot of training to do if you're going to pay back what your parents cost us. I walked toward my room. As I passed the kitchen table, I saw my stepmother's phone. A new message appeared from an unknown number, the same one that had been texting me earlier. Don't worry, I'm still watching. The fun is just beginning. I stood in my bedroom, staring at the empty spaces on my bookshelves, the places where my life used to be. The rain drummed against the thin roof, steady, relentless, like a countdown. Outside, I could hear my father, muffled shouts, as they shoved him into the back of the cruiser. It should have felt like relief. Instead, it felt like a lead weight, sinking into my stomach. I was alone, in a house that was no longer mine, standing in front of a man who had bought my soul for $50,000 in a training program. I didn't understand. The man in the gray suit stood in the doorway. His silhouette blocked the hallway light. He didn't speak. He just checked his watch. The silver casing caught the dim light. Who are you? I asked. My voice echoed in the stripped-down room. Who is really behind that phone? My stepmother said. Someone told her about the money. Someone told her to check the keychain. The man tilted his head just slightly. We provided the opportunity, he said. How your family reacted was the final stage of your evaluation. We needed to know if you were truly unencumbered. A person who can't trust their family is a person with a weakness our competitors could exploit. Now, that weakness has been removed. My stomach turned. You set them up, I said. You knew they'd steal it. You baited them just to see if I let them go to jail. We didn't make them thieves, he replied. Cold. We showed them who they already were. And more importantly, we showed you who you are. You didn't give them the money. You fought for your future. That survival instinct. That's what we're looking for. He gestured toward the hallway. Leave the bags. We'll provide everything you need. The clothes you're wearing are the last things you'll ever own that weren't issued by the firm. I followed him outside. My heart hammered, a frantic rhythm against my ribs. The wet air hit me. Ozone, wet pavement. The black SUV idled, exhaust curling into the night like a ghost. I looked back one last time. The beige ranch house, the place where I learned to hide my food, my money, my feelings. It looked small, pathetic. I climbed into the back seat. The leather was cold. It smelled brand new. The man sat in front. The driver pulled away. Without a word, I pulled out my phone. My thumb hovered over the unknown number, the one that had been haunting me. I typed, I'm in a car. What do you want from me? The reply came before we reached the end of the street. Look under the floor mat. Left side, under the seat. I hesitated. I glanced at the man's head. In the front seat, he stared straight ahead, unbothered. I reached down. My fingers brushed the rubber mat. I peeled it back. Something hard, cold, a small silver locket, one I hadn't seen in over 10 years. I snapped it open. Inside, a picture, a woman with my eyes, smiling, sun-drenched garden, my mother. Behind the photo, a folded note, handwritten. My heart stopped. The firm didn't find you. I gave you to them. It was the only way to get you away from him. Run when the jet lands in Berlin. Don't look back. I stared out the window. The town's water tower passed by. The welcome to sign faded into darkness. The twist wasn't that my parents were thieves. It wasn't that the firm was a shadow corporation. It was this: the one person I thought loved me, sold me, not as an investment, as a weapon. One she had spent 18 years sharpening. Is something wrong? The man asked. His eyes met mine in the rearview mirror. No, I said. I closed my hand around the locket. The metal bit into my palm. Everything is exactly how it's supposed to be. I looked at my phone again. The typing bubbles danced. One last message. See you at the airport, kid. The airport was a ghost town. At midnight, a vast stretch of polished marble, echoing silence. It felt less like a travel hub and more like a mausoleum. The man in the gray suit led me through a side entrance. We bypassed security. No lines, no scanners, no baggage carousels. Straight toward the private hangars, the place where real power lived. My hand stayed clenched around the locket. In my pocket, the jagged metal edge bit into my skin, a reminder that my entire life had been scripted. Out on the tarmac, a sleek white jet waited, its engines whined, high-pitched, hungry. At the bottom of the boarding stairs, a figure stood in a long camel hair coat. Even from 50 yards away, I knew that silhouette, the woman from the locket. Older, sharper, the source of my reflection. The man in the suit stopped, gave a stiff nod. Your handler is waiting, he said. For the first time, his voice carried something else, respect or fear. I walked forward, each step heavier than the last. When I reached her, she didn't hug me. She didn't cry. She just looked me over, up, down, cold, proud, predatory. You kept the money, she said, her voice silk over gravel. Good. If you had given it to that pathetic man, I would have let the firm finish you both. Compassion is a luxury we can't afford. You sold me. I whispered. The words tasted like ash. You left me with him for 10 years, just so I'd grow hateful enough to be useful. She stepped closer. Expensive perfume. Ozone. I didn't leave you, she said. I planted you. I knew he'd try to break you, and I knew you'd break him instead. That 50,000 wasn't a prize. It was a test. And now you have the capital to begin your real education. I look back at the city lights on the horizon. My father in a jail cell. My stepmother clutching stolen memories. Small-time villains. Parasites. But the woman in front of me, she was different. She was the architect. What happens now? I asked. Now, she said, turning toward the plane. We go to Berlin. You'll learn how to move money that doesn't exist. How to disappear in a room full of people. You'll become the one who decides who wins the prizes and who loses their homes. I stood on the bottom step. The wind whipped my hair across my face. That's when I realized I hadn't escaped my family cycle. I had graduated to a deadlier version. I reached into my pocket, pulled out the phone, the only link to the truth, and dropped it. It hit the wet tarmac with a dull crack. The jet door began to hiss shut. The screen lit up. One last time, a notification. I didn't look back. I walked into the cabin, sat in a seat, worth more than my father's house, watched the world I knew shrink, disappear beneath the clouds. I had the prize money. I had my freedom. And I had a mother who turned me into a ghost. It was everything I ever wanted, and it felt exactly like a death sentence. And that is the end of our story. The prize was won, but the cost was more than anyone could have predicted. What did you think about the final betrayal? Does it change how you feel about the choice to keep the money? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear how this story hit you. And if you enjoyed this dive into the darker side of family loyalty, don't forget to like and subscribe for more narrations. Until next time,